Was it all just a dream?
God bless you, Florida. Thank you.
Did the last 4 years not really happen? Look, there's Ben Affleck. He's often in my dreams. And the taxi driver guy, he was there too. And little Stevie Wonder, he seemed so happy, like a miracle had taken place. Was it a dream? Or was it real? It was election night 2000, and everything seemed to be going as planned.
In New York, Al Gore is our projected winner.
The Garden State is green for Gore.
We project that Mr. Gore is the winner in Delaware. This state has voted with the winner in
Excuse me 1 second. I'm so sorry to interrupt you. Mike, you know I wouldn't do this if it weren't big. Florida goes for Al Gore.
CNN announces that we call Florida in the Al Gore column.
Then something called the Fox News Channel called the election in favor of the other guy.
I'll interrupt you. Fox News now projects George W. Bush the winner in Florida, and thus it appears the winner of the presidency of the United States.
All of a sudden, the other network said, hey, if Fox said it, it must be true.
All of us at the networks made a mistake and projected Florida in the Al Gore column. It was our mistake.
Now, what most people don't know is that the man who was in charge of the decision desk at Fox that night, the man who called it for Bush, was none other than Bush's first cousin, John Ellis. How does someone like Bush get away with something like this? Well, first, it helps if your brother is the governor of the state in question.
You know something? We are going to win Florida. Mark my words. You can write it down.
Second, make sure the chairman of your campaign is also the vote counting woman, and that her state has hired a company that's going to knock voters off the rolls who aren't likely to vote for you. You can usually tell them by the color of their skin. Then make sure your side fights like it's life or death.
I think all this talk about legitimacy is way overblown.
And hope that the other side will just sit by and wait for the phone to ring. And even if numerous independent investigations prove that Gore got the most votes,
if there was a statewide recount under every scenario, Gore won the election.
It won't matter, just as long as all your daddy's friends on the Supreme Court vote the right way.
While I strongly disagree with the court's decision, I accept it.
What we need now is acceptance. We have a new president-elect.
It turns out none of this was a dream. It's what really happened. On the day the joint session of both the House of Representatives and the Senate was to certify the election results, Al Gore, in his dual role as outgoing Vice President and President of the Senate, presided over the event that would officially anoint George W. Bush as the new president. If any congressman wanted to raise an objection, the rules insisted that he or she had to have the signed support of just one senator.
Mr. President, and I take great pride in calling you that, I must object because of the overwhelming evidence of official misconduct, deliberate fraud, and an attempt to suppress voter turnout.
The chair must remind members that under Section 18 of Title III, United States Code, no debate is allowed in the joint session.
Thank you, Mr. President. To answer your question, Mr. President, the objection is in writing, signed by a number of members of the House of Representatives, but not by a member of the Senate.
Mr. President, it is in writing and signed by several House colleagues on behalf and myself of the 27,000 voters of Duval County, in which 16,000 of them are African Americans that was disenfranchised in this last election.
Is the objection signed by a member of the Senate?
Not signed by a member of the Senate. The Senate is missing.
Mr. President, it is in writing and signed by myself on behalf of many of the diverse constituents in our country, especially those in the 9th Congressional District, and all American voters who recognize that the Supreme Court, not the people of the United States, decided this election.
Is the objection signed by a senator?
Unfortunately, Mr. President, it is not signed by one single senator.
Unfortunately, I have no authority over the United States Senate, and no senator has signed.
Mr. President, it is in writing and signed by myself and several of my constituents from Florida. A senator is needed, but missing.
Is the objection in writing and signed by a member of the House and a senator.
The objection is in writing, and I don't care that it is not signed by a member of the Senate.
The chair will advise that the rules do care, and the signature of the senator.
Not a single senator came to the aid of the African Americans in Congress. One after another, they were told to sit down and shut up.
And it's a sad day in America, Mr. President, when we can't find a senator to sign objections.
The gentleman will suspend.
Won't sign objections, Mr. President.
The gentleman will suspend.
Inauguration coverage, 2001, on a nasty, but it could be worse kind of day in Washington.
On the day George W. Bush was inaugurated, tens of thousands of Americans poured into the streets of D.C. in one last attempt to reclaim what had been taken from them. They pelted Bush's limo with eggs and brought the inauguration parade to a halt. The plan to have Bush get out of the limo for the traditional walk to the White House was scrapped. Bush's limo hit the gas to prevent an even larger riot. No president had ever witnessed such a thing on his inauguration day. And for the next 8 months, it didn't get any better for George W. Bush. He couldn't get his judges appointed. He had trouble getting his legislation passed, and he lost Republican control of the Senate. His approval ratings in the polls began to sink. He was already beginning to look like a lame duck president. With everything going wrong, he did what any of us would do. He went on vacation. In his first 8 months in office before September 11th, George W. Bush was on vacation, according to the Washington Post, 42% of the time.
I hit every shot good. People would say I wasn't working.
It was not surprising that Mr. Bush needed some time off. Being president is a lot of work.
And these folks that say you're loafing here in Texas, that you're taking too long of a vacation.
They don't understand the definition of work then. I'm getting a lot done. Secondly, you don't have to be in Washington to work. It's amazing what can happen with telephones and faxes.
Thank you so much.
And just a destiny of voting.
Yeah.
What are you doing the rest of the day?
Karen Hughes is coming over. We're working on some things. And she'll be over here. We're working on a few things, a few matters. I'm working on some initiatives. You'll see. I mean, there'll be some decisions that I will have made while I'm here, and we'll be announcing them as time goes on.
The first time I met him, he had some good advice for me.
Governor Bush, it's Michael Moore.
Behave yourself, will you? Don't find real work.
And work was something he knew a lot about.
Anybody want some grits?
Relaxing at Camp David, yachting off Kennebunkport.
How you doing?
Or being a cowboy on the ranch in Texas.
I love the nature. I love to get in the pickup truck with my dogs. Oh, hi.
George Bush spent the rest of August at the ranch, where life was less complicated.
Armadale loved to dig the soil looking for bugs. And so I went out there the other day, and there was Barney buried in this hole, chasing an armadillo.
It was a summer to remember. And when it was over, he left Texas for his second favorite place. On September 10th, he joined his brother in Florida, where they looked at files and met important Floridians. He went to sleep that night in a bed made with fine French linens.
suppose he's pretty confident on those numbers on Iraqi security forces.
Make me look young. Yeah, I got a little sort of air noise. Yeah, just don't turn it up too much so I don't want to blow my head off.
I got a mic here if they want to hear. Testing 1, 2. This is the Oval Office. Testing 1, 2. Testing 1, 2. This is the Oval Office. Testing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Something that has happened here at the World Trade Center. We noticed flame and an awful lot of smoke.
On September 11, 2001, nearly 3,000 people, including a colleague of mine, Bill Weems, were killed in the largest foreign attack ever on American soil. The targets were the financial and military headquarters of the United States.
If anyone has any idea, if they've seen him or knows where he is, to call us. He's got two little babies. Two little babies.
As the attack took place, Mr. Bush was on his way to an elementary school in Florida. When informed of the first plane hitting the World Trade Center, where terrorists had struck just 8 years prior, Mr. Bush decided to go ahead with his photo opportunity.
Read this word the fast way. Get ready. Mad. Yes, mad. Get ready. Mad.
Yeah.
Okay, get ready to read the words on this page without making a mistake.
When the second plane hit the tower, his chief of staff entered the classroom and told Mr. Bush, the nation is under attack. Not knowing what to do, with no one telling him what to do, and no Secret Service rushing in to take him to safety, Mr. Bush just sat there and continued to read My Pet Goat with the children. Nearly 7 minutes passed with nobody doing anything. As Bush sat in that Florida classroom, was he wondering if maybe he should have shown up to work more often? Should he have held at least one meeting since taking office to discuss the threat of terrorism with his head of counterterrorism? Or maybe Mr. Bush was wondering why he had cut terrorism funding from the FBI. Or perhaps he just should have read the security briefing that was given to him on August 6, 2001, which said that Osama bin Laden was planning to attack America by hijacking airplanes. But maybe he wasn't worried about the terrorist threat because the title of the report was too vague.
I believe the title was Bin Laden Determined to Attack Inside the United States.
A report like that might make some men jump, but as in days past, George W. just went fishing. As the minutes went by, George Bush continued to sit in the classroom. Was he thinking, I've been hanging out with the wrong crowd? Which one of them screwed me? Was it the guy my daddy's friends delivered a lot of weapons to? Was it that group of religious fundamentalists who visited my state when I was governor? Or was it the Saudis? Damn, it was them. I think I better blame it on this guy. In the days following September 11th, all commercial and private airline traffic was grounded.
The FAA has taken the action to close all of the airports in the United States.
Even grounding the president's father, former President Bush, on a flight forced to land in Milwaukee.
Thousands of travelers were stranded, among them Ricky Martin, due to appear at tonight's Latin Grammy Awards.
Not even Ricky Martin could fly. But really, who wanted to fly? No one, except the Bin Ladens.
We had some airplanes authorized at the highest levels of our government to fly to pick up Osama bin Laden's family members and others from Saudi Arabia and transport them out of this country.
It turns out that the White House approved planes to pick up the Bin Ladens and numerous other Saudis. At least 6 private jets and nearly 24 commercial planes carried the Saudis and the Bin Ladens out of the U.S. after September 13th. In all, 142 Saudis, including 24 members of the Bin Laden family, were allowed to leave the country.
Osama's always been portrayed as the bad apple, the black sheep in the family, and that they cut off all relationship with him around 1994. In fact, things are much more complicated than that.
You mean Osama has had contact with other family members?
That's right. In the summer of 2001, just before 9/11, one of Osama's sons got married in Afghanistan, and several family members showed up at the wedding.
Bin Laden.
That's right. So they've not cut off completely. That's really an exaggeration.
We now welcome to Larry King Live. Good to see him again. Prince Bandar, the ambassador of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to the United States.
We had about 24 members of Bin Laden's family. And in America, students, and His Majesty felt it's not fair for those innocent people to be subjected to any harm. On the other hand, we understood, had a high emotion. So with coordination with the FBI, we got them all out.
This is retired FBI agent Jack Clunan. Before 9/11, he was a senior agent on the joint FBI-CIA Al-Qaeda task force.
I, as an investigator, would not want these people to have left. I think in the case of the Bin Laden family, I think it would have been prudent. Hand the subpoenas out, have them come in, get on the record. You know, get on the record.
That's the proper procedure.
Yeah. How many people were pulled off of airlines after that coming into the country who were what? They were from the Middle East, or they fit a very general picture.
We held hundreds of
and
weeks and months at a time. Did the authorities do anything when the Bin Ladens tried to leave the country?
No, they were identified at the airport. They looked at their passports, and they were identified.
Well, that's what would happen to you or I if we were in the country.
Exactly.
So a little interview, check the passport, what else?
Nothing.
I don't know about you, but usually when the police can't find a murderer, don't they usually want to talk to the family members to find out where they think he might be?
You have no idea where your husband might be.
Well, if you should hear anything, let us know, will you?
You willing to come downtown and give us a statement?
This gonna take long? You got the time?
Mine's worth money, yours isn't.
Send in a bill.
I asked you a question.
You're here to answer them, not ask them.
Now, you listen to me, cop. I pay your salary.
All right, sit down. I'm gonna earn it.
Yeah, that's how cops do it. What was going on here?
I think we need to know a lot more about that. That needs to be the subject of a significant investigation. What happened? How did it happen? Why did it happen? And who authorized it?
Trying to imagine what those poor bastards were feeling when they were jumping out of that building to their death. Those young guys and cops and firemen that ran into that building, never asked a question, and they're dead. And families' lives are ruined. And they'll never have peace. And if I had to inconvenience a member of the Bin Laden family with a subpoena or a grand jury, do you think I'd lose any sleep over it? Not for a minute, Mike.
No one would question it.
No, it's right.
Not even the biggest civil libertarian.
No, it's
no
just,
one would question
it's just, you know, you got a lawyer, fine. Counselor, fine. Mr. Bin Laden, this is why I'm asking you. It's not because I think that you're anything. I just want to ask you the questions that I would anybody.
Right.
And that's all.
None of this made any sense. Can you imagine in the days after the Oklahoma City terrorist bombing, President Clinton helping to arrange a trip out of the country for the McVeigh family? What do you think would have happened to Clinton if that had been revealed?
Bandar, do you know the Bin Laden family?
I do very well.
What are they like?
They're really lovely human beings. He is the only one I don't know him well, but I met him only once.
What was the circumstance under which you met him?
This is ironic. In mid-80s, if you remember, we in the United States were supporting the Mujahideen to liberate Afghanistan from the Soviets. He came to thank me for my efforts to bring the Americans, our friends, to help us against the atheists, he said, the communists. Isn't it ironic?
Whereas he came to thank you for helping bring America to help him. And now he may be responsible for bombing America.
Absolutely.
What did you make of him when you met him?
I was not impressed, to be honest with you.
Not impressed?
No, I thought he was simple and very quiet guy.
A simple and quiet guy whose family just happened to have a business relationship with the family of George W. Bush. Is that what he was thinking about? Because if the public knew this, it wouldn't look very good. Was he thinking, you know, I need a big black marker. In early 2004, in a speech during the New Hampshire primary, I called George W. Bush a deserter from his time in the Texas Air National Guard. In response, the White House released his military records in the hopes of disproving the charge. What Bush didn't know is that I already had a copy of his military records, uncensored, obtained in the year 2000. And there is one glaring difference between the records released in 2000 and those he released in 2004. A name had been blacked out. In 1972, 2 airmen were suspended for failing to take their medical examination. One was George W. Bush, and the other was James R. Bath. In 2000, the documents show both names. But in 2004, Bush and the White House had Bath's name blacked out. Why didn't Bush want the press and the public to see Bath's name on his military records? Perhaps he was worried that the American people would find out that at one time James R. Bath was the Texas money manager for the Bin Ladens. Bush and Bath had become good friends when they both served in the Texas Air National Guard. After they were discharged, when Bush's dad was head of the CIA, Bath opened up his own aviation business after selling a plane to a man by the name of Salam bin Laden, heir to the second largest fortune in Saudi Arabia, the Saudi bin Laden Group.
W at that time was just starting off in the world as a businessman. Because he's a guy who's always tried to emulate his father, he decided to go into the oil business. He founded an oil company, a drilling company out in West Texas called Arbusto, which was very, very good at drilling dry holes that nothing came out of. But the question has always been, where did this money come from? Now his dad was rich. His dad could have done this for him, but his dad didn't do this for him. There's no indication that Daddy wrote a check to start him off in this company.
So where did George W. Bush get his money?
I'm George Bush.
One person who did invest in him was James R. Bath. Bush's good friend, James Bath, was hired by the Bin Laden family to manage their money in Texas and invest in businesses. And James Bath himself, in turn, invested in George W. Bush. Bush ran Arbusto into the ground, as he did every other company he was involved in, until finally one of his companies was bought by Harken Energy, and they gave him a seat on their board.
A lot of us have suspected through the years that there has been Saudi oil money involved in all of these companies. Harken, Spectrum 7, Arbusto Drilling, all of the Bush companies. Whenever they got into trouble, there were these angel investors who flowed money into the companies.
So the question is, why would Saudis, who had all the oil in the world, go around the globe to invest in this lousy oil company? And the thing is, it had one big asset. Harken had one thing going for it, which is that George W. Bush was on its board of directors at a time when his father was president of the United States.
When you're the president's son and you've got unlimited access combined with some credentials from a prior campaign, in Washington, D.C., people tend to respect that. I mean, access is power. And I can find my dad and talk to him any time of the day.
Yes, it helps to be the president's son, especially when you're being investigated by the Securities and Exchange Commission.
In 1990, when Mr. Bush was a director of Harken Energy, he received this memo from company lawyers, warning directors not to sell stock if they had unfavorable information about the company. 1 week later, he sold $848,000 worth of Harken stock. 2 months later, Harken announced losses of more than $23 million.
The James Baker law partner who helped Bush beat the rap from the SEC was a man by the name of Robert Jordan, who, when George W. became president, was appointed ambassador to Saudi Arabia. After the Harken debacle, the friends of Bush's dad got him a seat on another board of a company owned by the Carlyle Group.
We wanted to look at which companies actually gained from September 11th. turned up this company, Carlyle Group. The Carlyle Group is a multinational conglomerate that invests in heavily government-regulated industries like telecommunications, healthcare, and particularly defense. Both George W. Bush and George H.W. Bush worked for the Carlyle Group, the same company that counted the bin Laden family among its investors. Carlyle Group was holding its annual investor conference on the morning of September 11th in the Ritz-Carlton Hotel in Washington, D.C. At that meeting were all of the Carlyle regulars. James Baker, likely John Major, definitely George H.W. Bush, though he left the morning of September 11th. Shafiq bin Laden, who is Osama bin Laden's half-brother, and was in town to look after his family's investments in the Carlyle Group. All of them together in one room watching as the planes hit the towers, and that in fact the bin Laden family was invested in one of their defense funds, which ironically meant that as the United States started increasing its defense spending, the bin Laden family stood to gain from those investments through the Carlyle Group.
Our Commander-in-Chief, President George W. Bush.
With all the weapons companies it owned, the Carlyle Group was, in essence, the 11th largest defense contractor in the United States.
Thanks a lot.
It owned United Defense, makers of the Bradley Armored Fighting Vehicle. September 11th guaranteed that United Defense was going to have a very good year. Just 6 weeks after 9/11, Carlyle filed to take United Defense public, and in December made a one-day profit of $237 million. But sadly, with so much attention focused on the bin Laden family being important Carlyle investors, the bin Ladens eventually had to withdraw. Bush's dad, though, stayed on as senior advisor to Carlyle's Asia board for another 2 years.
As unseemly as it seems to know that George H.W. Bush was meeting with the bin Laden family while Osama was a wanted terrorist, well before September 11th. It's very discomforting for Americans to know that. George H.W. Bush is a man who has obviously incredible reach into the White House. He receives daily CIA briefings, which is the right of any ex-president, but very few ex-presidents actually exercise that right. He does. And I think in a very real way, they are benefiting from the confusion that arises when George H.W. Bush visits Saudi Arabia on behalf of Carlyle and meets with the royal family and meets with the bin Laden family. Is he representing the United States of America, or is he representing an investment firm in the United States of America, or is he representing both? This company is about money. It's not about conspiracies to run the world or engineer political maneuvering and things like that. It's about making money, and it's about making a lot of money, and they've done very well.
To get you on the record on this question, in the White House view, there's no ethical conflict in former President Bush and former Secretary of State Jim Baker using their contacts with world leaders to represent one of the most well-known military arms dealers, the Carlyle Group.
The President has full faith that his family will conform with all proper ethics laws, and will act properly in their conduct.
Okay, so let's say one group of people, like the American people, pay you $400,000 a year to be President of the United States. But then another group of people invest in you, your friends, and their related businesses $1.4 billion over a number of years. Who are you going to like? Who's your daddy? Because that's how much the Saudi royals and their associates have given the Bush family,
Morning, everybody. Oh, we know
their friends,
How are you, sir?
and their related businesses in the past 3 decades.
Seems like a very nice reunion with friends.
Is it rude to suggest that when the Bush family wakes up in the morning, they might be thinking about what's best for the Saudis instead of what's best for you or me?
Yes, know each other.